Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with our guest, Joshua Freedman. He is the CEO, co-founder of 6 Seconds. He challenges us to rethink leadership, asking us to really understand how to put people at the center of our business. And what does that really mean? He's worked with everyone from the United Nations to FedEx, from city governments and nonprofits. He is a best-selling author. He's written 5 books, including At the Heart of Leadership, which is a transformational book for leadership and for leaders. And in part 1 of the show, we were really talking about this meta crisis that we're in, that we're looking at the potential of economic recession, interest rates, all the rest of it. But there's this emotional recession that's been going on that Joshua's company have been tracking across 160 countries and literally looking at what's actually happening, why we're sort of all recessing, pulling back into ourselves rather than moving out, that there is this huge burnout. And that's where I want to start here, because burnout's this weird thing. It's kind of one of those statements that's thrown around. We don't really know what it means. We know what it feels like. But it's also can just as easily be used by someone as just as a way to not do anything. It's very passive. What are you seeing from the research around, let's just start with burnout?
Yeah, so in part 1, I mentioned that we have these competencies that add up to something we call drive, and drive has been the biggest decline over the last 5 years globally. And drive is the antidote to burnout.
Right.
So one of the things that's interesting is a lot of people, when they talk about burnout, they think it means I'm working too much. And you and I suspect everyone listening, has experienced times we worked our asses off and we woke up in the morning, we were fired up. And then there are other seasons of our lives when we actually haven't been working that hard, but we wake up in the morning and like it's hard to get out of bed. So it's not actually the amount of work. Burnout is connected to the loss of certain emotional needs, belonging and meaning, a sense of achievement, a sense of feeling value and valued. And going on a break, going to a retreat in Bali, going to take a nap, all of those things sound fantastic to me right now, but none of them is actually going to solve burnout.
So I think that that's a really important pause for people to take, because I think you're absolutely right. The direct equation of burnout is I'm doing or I have done too much. And what I'm hearing from you is not that I have done too much, it's that I have done too much that has no meaning or lacks the emotional substance that I need that will generate drive within me. So I'm burned out from doing that which doesn't mean much to me. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, either it doesn't mean much to me or it doesn't mean not much to others. I don't feel that sense of support. I don't feel that efficacy that I'm getting results. So there's this combination of feelings that signal to us, yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going. And when we don't have those emotional needs met, we move into depletion. A lot of us, what we do is we go into depletion and then the script kicks in of cowboy up, man, come on, work harder. And then we work harder and we still are depleted. We're still not getting those basic needs met. And then we move into this vicious cycle, which leads us deeper and deeper into depletion.
That kind of takes us into this whole subject around purpose and meaning that you and I have spent a lot of time talking about, not only on previous recordings, but even in our own chats. I feel like so much of what we talk about is so vitally important and yet so poorly understood because there's not enough self-knowledge to really sort of anchor it in for a lot of people. But if you don't have purpose and people are looking for that as this single line thing that is going to manage everything in your life, but below that for me is what's the meaning? Because the truth is I can give anything purpose if I have the right meaning. I can get dressed in the morning on purpose, but with no meaning, and it's kind of like, But if it has meaning, so it's this purpose, meaning to me that is grounded in emotional intelligence, but that then creates the drive that you're talking about. Do you see it the same way, or is it someone else?
Well, I'd like to add another dimension, and this requires getting into some kind of deep waters. I'm going to give you an example of the work that my organization does with young climate activists.
Yes.
And so we have this project called Climate of Emotions, which is about supporting the sustainability of sustainability work.
Just say that again, because that's good. Supporting the sustainability of sustainability work. In other words, don't burn out doing sustainability work.
Exactly. And we see so many, particularly young activists, burn out.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in my own family. When you're every day out there saying, look, the planet is burning, we need to do something. And people are like, yeah, but the shoes are on sale. Like, it's really exhausting. It's beyond exhausting. Anyway, a lot of climate activists, young climate activists who I talk to, and I talk to them about purpose, they say, well, we need to reduce the average global temperature. So my purpose is to reduce temperature. And I can see in your eyes right now, you're going, wait, that's not right. What they've done is they've externalized, and they've taken this idea of what is my purpose, and they've given it away to what happens out there in the world. And of course, that's deeply depleting. So if we go, okay, why? Why are we going to reduce global temperature? Okay, well, Okay, but why does that matter? Okay, but why does that matter? At the end of the day, we come to something internal.
Exactly.
I want to contribute to a world where people feel taken care of. I want a world where everyone can thrive. I want to move out of extraction and into renewal, where actually the world is getting better and better and better every year. Okay, then here's the really remarkable moment. Let's put aside the work of climate, or let's put aside your work as a CXO. Let's put that aside and say, in the taxi cab today, how do you do that? In the grocery store, when the person in front of you is trying to count their pennies and you're like, come on, I got to get to a meeting. How do you do that? When your flight is delayed and you're standing in the airport and like everybody's yelling at the gate agent and you're like, can you help me rebook my flight? And they're like, no, there are no flights. How do you do that? And it's in those moments when we can find, oh, look, I want more grace in the world. I want more belonging in the world. I want more connection in the world. I want more prosperity in the world. I want more love in the world. I want more learning in the world. I want more curiosity in the world. And curiosity is a beautiful one because like you've found like, hey, if I can spark curiosity, and you've done this amazing thing of finding how do I bring that into my work as well as into my day-to-day life. But when we can find that, nobody can take it away. It's inside us. We've moved the dependency of purpose from outside to inside. And that gives us incredible fortitude. It gives us incredible strength and magnetism as leaders. And people want to connect with that. People want to feel that. They want to belong to that. And we feel it on the inside. And when we do that, then we're leading.
It's so fascinating. I really appreciate what you just said so much, because to me, it's so fascinating how when I ask the question, what is your purpose, whether that's of the organization or of the individual, how very quickly it becomes an external thing. People who've read Simon Sinek start with why. Good book, great stuff. And then they tell me what it is. I'm like, that's not your purpose. No, it is, though. That really is. Honestly, it's not. And they think I'm being a dick. And I'm not. It's not me trying to be arrogant. It's just trying to understand something. But your purpose is yours. It's internal and then externally expressed. So you can apply your internal purpose to saving the planet. Sure. But how are you going to save the planet while getting Starbucks? How are you going to save the planet while being frustrated at the counter? Whatever it might be. It seems like it's so difficult for people to get their head around that. And yet it seems like foundationally simple. And again, we're back into this place around emotional intelligence on paper, like purpose on paper, is different than emotional intelligence in process, in being with, in living with, is the same as like purpose. So yes, you've got your purpose, but it's not really your purpose. It's externalized. You've got your emotional intelligence. You know why people are feeling what things they're feeling, and you've got the skills to maneuver around those and manage those feelings, but you're not connected to your own emotions, and you're not connected to your own purpose. So, I mean, I remember last time we had this conversation, feeling like,
Yeah, this deep disconnection. And by the way, I think we've in some way outsourced that sense of value and validation to social media companies.
Oh, yes.
There's a different meta crisis. It's like, how many people have reacted? How quickly have they reacted? They even call them reactions.
Yes.
And so like, yes, let's react more. And and people like us are going, no, let's respond. Let's stop reacting so much. So we at 6 Seconds, we measure this competency and we call it pursue noble goals. So the noble goal is that deep why. And the pursue is how do I put it into action in a day-to-day basis? How do I embody it? How do I bring it forward in the middle of a complicated conversation with somebody?
I want to make the distinction so people understand. Tell us the distinction between a noble goal and what we think of as goals, because anybody who's been in leadership or in business, set your goals, particularly it's the new year, set your goals. Yeah. That's quite different than noble goals. So tell us what the distinction is.
Well, we have 5 criteria of a noble goal, and one of them is it's not complete in your lifetime. So immediately people are like, no, but I have to make SMART goals. It's like, okay. This is not about something you're going to accomplish right now. It's about why you're going to accomplish those things. It's about who you're going to be as you do the things that you're doing. And as you look back in this moment, you imagine 10 years from now, you look back and you go, yeah, 2025 was a complicated year.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? In the midst of that, I showed up as somebody who is X, Y, and Z. I was somebody who really modeled ABC. That thing, that how you really wanted to be, that tells you something about your noble goal, much more than what you did or didn't do.
So it's a chosen state of being.
Yeah.
A chosen state of being based on your self-knowledge and your willingness to be integral to that.
Yes. And your emotions are guides to it.
Yes.
Because we can feel it. We feel the disharmony, the disintegration when we're moving out of that state. And we can feel the energy and clarity. We can feel the power of it. I feel it as like heat in my blood when I'm really connected with that and bringing it forward. I can feel it. I've been told the people that I'm around can feel it.
That's it again. So now we're at what appears to be vague woo-woo area, which is I can feel it.
Yep.
But as you were talking about in part 1 about the test for the IQ of a large language model versus the EQ, the large language model cannot feel it. We have a sense that we have a difficulty even verbalizing or giving concretization to of just that knowing.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example that I find particularly frustrating in that I spend a long time crafting what I place on social media. So when I write my newsletter, which goes out every Tuesday on LinkedIn, it's a variety of subjects across a broad spectrum. And I spend a lot of hours crafting that thing that you're going to read in somewhere between 5 and 7 or 8 minutes. But I've spent multiple hours.
Probably the more hours you spend, the less time it takes me to read it.
Exactly. Right. So I've spent all that time doing that. And then I'm reading these comments and I can tell which ones are AI generated. That you, whoever you are, Mr., Mrs., whoever, have a bot that reads my article or kind of reads my article and then puts some kind of comment. So you look like you're smart, but I, the author, know that's not you.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's uniquely me. I think that we know when it's an AI article or an AI comment. What do you know about that?
So I mentioned in part 1, we were talking a lot about trust, right? And I mentioned this huge project I'm working on, which is a big part of this company's business is in contact centers. There's all this hype that contact centers are going to go away because it's going to be replaced by AI. But what we're seeing is that the amount of contact is not going down. The desire to speak to a human being isn't going down. In fact, it's going up.
Yes.
And the more complicated the situation, AI is taking care of the easy stuff. And we're seeing the same thing in law cases. We're seeing even in medicine, the AI can do the easy stuff. What's left is challenging. It's complicated. It's complicated rationally, but it's also complicated emotionally. So we talked earlier about this survival system. We have to know, it's crucial to our survival to know what's real, to know what's authentic, to know when somebody's looking at us in the eye and they're lying to us. And some people are great at it, but most people aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, you can really tell. And in the same thing with content, what Gen AI does is it's essentially an average, this predictive tokenization. You look at these parts of words and put it together and say, okay, based on this part of the word and this part of this word, this part of the word, this is probably the next part of a word, and this is part of the next part of the word, and it assembles it. And it's essentially taken the average from the drunk guy on Reddit who is commenting and the brilliant piece that some wonderful scholar has written and kind of averaged it together into this blurry answer.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very cool study where they took numbers and they just hand wrote a set of numbers and trained Gen AI on this number set and said, write numbers. And it could write them and they look great. Not quite as unusual and crisp as the original, but okay, good. Now take that output, train another Gen AI on it, write these numbers. Do it 30 times, and what you end up with is blur, 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 blur.
A photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. For those of us who are old and know what photocopies mean.
Exactly. The mimeograph. Yeah, and it just gets blurrier and blurrier and blurrier. Less distinct, less authentic, less voice. There's something, another old reference, is it Live or is it Memorex?
Right.
Like we get little edges polished off and polished off and polished off. And as those rough edges get polished off, we can hear it in voices. We can hear, is this really a person singing? We can see it in the art. It's a little too shiny.
Mm-hmm.
We can read it in the language. It's just in a world where blah, 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 blah. So to conclude, blah, 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 blah. It's a little formulaic.
Yeah.
And that triggers our distrust.
Isn't that interesting that the degrading of the humanity of it comes from the polishing of it? I think that's really important for people to grasp. I was interviewing a professor from the University of Chicago, and we were talking about perfectionism. Mm-hmm. And we live in this world, particularly in North America, where everybody's trying to be bloody perfect. Like we're trying to get it perfectly. How in America, everybody wants to get everything perfect, but perfect is dead. We're all aspiring to be perfect and then waiting for this eulogy to talk about how perfect we are. Yet it was our imperfections that made us human. And that's what's so valuable to us. You just pointed out something very important there about AI. It's perfecting its input from these grubbies, but at the same time, it loses its humanity immediately it does that, because I don't say everything right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't breathe before the sentence as much as I should. Sometimes I breathe in between. Sometimes I throw in an or an or whatever it might be. And it's that humanity that we kind of have this sense of, like this internal radar of, when we see these comments or read these articles that are like, yeah, that's really good, but some it's off.
I would guess, if we could poll your listeners for a second, I would guess your kind of raw edges is part of why they're here, right? There's something a little bit, a little rough in the Barrett show, right? It's just like a little uncensored, a little raw, a little, right? And that, I think, is part of what people are like, yeah, he's real and challenging.
Yes.
If it was all like this, welcome, we're going to talk today about,
welcome to the BBC. Well, today we'll be talking to Professor Joshua Freedman about this wonky little thing called emotional intelligence. But I think you're right. When I look at that, it seems to go hand in hand. This desire for perfection and getting it right, and that sort of pushing AI. And at the same time, that's pulling us further and further away from our humanity, which is what makes us interesting. I've used to say years ago, a long time before AI was what it was, and I said the only difference between a robot, what were they called? It was a movie. Oh, Stepford Wives, right? Stepford Wives. These perfect wives who made the cookies and made the dinner and looked beautiful and gave you a martini and shagged you when you came home from work. The perfect wife is not particularly interesting. The perfect husband is not particularly interesting. It might meet all your needs, but it's not really meeting the emotional interjection. There's an emotional, rational, intellectual combination intercourse that takes place in the interplay between us that we don't necessarily agree with everything. But as I say something you don't agree with, you think, and then it explodes something else in your mind, or vice versa. And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't think about this. That's the interplay.
It reminds me of the Barbie movie, right? And it's like everything is polished and perfect and easy, and we're having parties every night, and it's really empty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just to connect the dots here, authenticity, trust, AI, this time of dysregulation that we're in, and leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this context where people are feeling this tumultuousness of the meta crisis. They're feeling disconnected. They're feeling a fragility. They're feeling uncertain. They're seeking out support. They're seeking out something that can help them go, okay. It's not all falling apart. And at one level, we can get that from the fake strong.
Yes.
Or fake, this sounds polished, but there's something empty. They're empty calories. There's some part of us that's like, I want something more. I can feel it. And then we meet a leader who's really tapped into that noble goal, who's really living it, is connected with purpose. And we go, that is a breath of fresh air. And we're craving that. And that's why what's interesting to me about this declining emotional intelligence and the emotional recession is that it means that scarcity makes this even more precious. That leaders who are doing this, companies that are doing this, if you're really genuinely committed to people, with 6 seconds, we say emotions drive people, people drive performance. If you're really bought into that, you're going to have the best talent in the world. You're going to have breakthrough innovation and performance and loyalty and connection because it's so rare right now. And AI is going to make it even more rare.
I fully agree. I think that we are trading off our humanity for AI, and the most valuable thing is going to be our humanity. As we become more transhuman, as we become more augmented, the thing that will be most valuable will be the human side, the humanity. As we get more and more AI integrated in us, it will be the human aspect of us, that deliciousness of a sweet little human thing that we're pursuing everything else, and yet that's the gem that is in the center that we really need to hold to.
We're craving it.
Craving it, yes.
And I think that craving we can see in so many places in society and in our workplaces. And I think that we're going to see more and more of this. We've already seen in our data that emotional intelligence is predictive of performance. And we've seen that predictive power going up. And so as kind of there's more mess around us, these pillars of strength become even more powerful.
What's the one thing that you want the leaders who are listening today, who are feeling this meta crisis, who are feeling this pressure, who are quote unquote burned out and feeling like it's really hard to get my people gathered together? What's the one thing you want them to get out of this conversation?
This matters. Your feeling of dysregulation, of discombobulation, that feeling is a message for you. That feeling that you don't have the connection that you want with your people, that is the message for you. And you can do something about it. I think a lot of leaders, and we've done surveys on this, like, why don't you prioritize emotional intelligence in your organization? And the answer is usually, we don't really know how, or it's not really my job. It's like, yeah, that's important. That's nice. But I don't directly influence culture. Who does then?
But I think that's an interesting question, because I don't think people know who does. Because they want to put it off on HR. Well, we know HR is a buffer zone for legal. It's not really HR anymore like it used to be. And I think as you said, a lot of people in the leadership role are looking at and going, well, this person is in charge of this and they're burned out.
Mm-hmm.
And this person's in charge of that and they're burned out. And the people who are under them are all burned out. And everybody's on edge and everybody's just trying to do their job. It feels, again, like trying to eat the whole elephant. And I don't think people know where to start. And so is there a sort of starting place? Is there some bite-sized piece that we can give to those people who are saying, I know my culture's up the yin-yang right now. I want to really care about my people. I do really care about my people. I just don't know how to reach everybody because everybody's got their own crises happening.
I'll give you the free answer and the paid answer.
Okay.
Okay. The free answer is emotions are data. They're not good or bad. They're data, and they're there to tell you something, and you can engage with that data. It's available to you if you choose to. So that's the easy, free thing you can do, is just noticing emotions, noticing your own, noticing others, acknowledge it. You don't need to fix it.
Right.
Just noticing it, naming it. In my research on what happens when people start practicing emotional intelligence, one of the things that I looked at is, what was your first step? What was your next step? What was your next step? And how did that breakthrough happen for you? And there's this connecting point where people realize, oh, hey, my emotions and the way I handle them change the outcomes.
Mm.
And when I realize that, I can start taking ownership of emotions. That was the free answer. The paid answer is, the other thing we found in this study is a very large percentage of people said, when I had an emotional intelligence test and I had a coaching session with somebody who really knew what they were doing, it blew my mind. And I realized that where I was, but also where I could go. There's some assessments that are just diagnostic. It's like, okay, here's what you are. And I don't really care about that. What I really care about is, now what? And I think that if you can work with a coach who has this capability, and I'm happy to recommend somebody if any of you want, you will find that is one of the best ways you can spend an hour this year.
Beautiful. So what is the one thing that your younger self would be most surprised to know about you?
I spent a lot of time trying to be the smartest guy in the room, and I care very little about that now. And letting go of that, it's really connected to my noble goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I had to earn respect and earn love by being smart. And thank God I learned that before Gen AI shattered my illusions that I was going to be smart. And my noble goal is to inspire compassionate wisdom. And for me, inspiring compassionate wisdom is the opposite of trying to be the smartest guy in the room, trying to be right over others. And when I connected those dots for myself, it was so liberating.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Joshua, as always, my friend, it is a pleasure and honor. I'm really grateful for your wisdom. Thank you for your conversation, for taking the time to be with us, to be with my listeners and my viewers. Please tell them where they can find out more about you and all your wonderful resources.
Well, I encourage you to head over to 6seconds.org. It's a massive site. There's case studies and articles, and some of the companies that you mentioned have allowed us to publish cases about what happens when you implement emotional intelligence. I'm personally quite active on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to connect with any of you. We have the Emotional Intelligence Network group on LinkedIn, where there are now about 1 million people engaging, sharing insights. And so I look forward to seeing you there.
Beautiful. Of course, we'll make sure that all the links are posted in the show notes. Till then, remember that those who control the meaning for the tribe also control the movement of the tribe. Leaders committed to positively, psychologically, and making a positive difference know they got to look at what drives human behavior. I'm Dov Barron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified, actualized meaning is the single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for individuals and companies. Remember, we need your help in staying relevant, so please go to wherever it is that you tune in from and do us a favor. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And of course, a big thank you to you for sharing the show with everybody you know. We need your help in staying relevant, so please make sure that you do subscribe and make sure you share it with everyone. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious. about the AI revolution and how it is nowhere near as important as your emotional evolution. As you become more integrated with the AI world, it is the humanity of who you are that will become more and more valuable. You may feel like you're under a lot of pressure and a lot of strain right now. We understand that. It's obviously true. But it's the connection to your humanity that builds the trust of those that you lead. Find your noble goal. And remember, it's internal, like Joshua explained to you. And if you didn't catch that, just caught this a little bit, go back and listen, because it's really important. I'm Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, in your life, in your leadership impact. And I am out.